Twitter, and wherever else we are. I know I sound confused every time I'm listing them out, but that's uh, because the only social media I really use is LinkedIn. I hope I'm not offending anybody else, but wherever you are tuning in, I hope you were able to join us live. Please say hello. If not, that's cool too. Still say hello because I know that my guests and I will monitor these chats in all of these different places and interact and engage with you and answer questions the best we can, whether you're here live or whether you are watching the replay. I am really excited today because Tate Linden was introduced to me by a mutual friend, and I said, "Yeah, I'll talk to him. What's the deal? Like, I've never heard of Tate Linden. I thought he was like a marketing guy, and turns out he is like passionate and so impressively invested and just an incredible resource on all things related to organizational integrity. And it's such a like I'd never even heard the phrase like that before. And so I was so excited to learn more, and I did, and I knew that I had to share that with the rest of you.
He
So,
sounds like a great guy.
yeah, sorry. I know sometimes this is uncomfortable. Somebody once said I should put you in the backstage and then bring you up, but no, let's embrace the discomfort. Hi, Sandra. Thanks for joining. So, Tate is an organizational integrity consultant and the founding principal of Stokefire. In plain English, that means that he gets people to do stuff differently today than they did yesterday on behalf of causes they and he believes in. He's gotten so many results with past clients, including he put up a billboard campaign that brought in over $60 million for a sustainable manufacturing client with a net project ROI of 600 to 1. He's had an integrated ad campaign that raised $2.8 billion over 10 years toward public safety in a single state for an annual return of greater than $20,000 for each dollar spent. It's unbelievable the resume that this guy has. And also, so much of this was in his marketing. I really want to get to this with you, Tate, today. How that translates and why anybody would change anything up when you found so much success in your first love. And we will definitely explore that. But Tate's goal is to help mission focused teams surpass their goals by bringing irresistible change inside and outside the organization. His happy past clients include Google, Heinz, Charles Schwab, U.S. Department of Defense, and Meals on Wheels America. Welcome, Tate. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me, David. This is great.
Great. Hi, Bob. Thanks for tuning in. Um, so, Tate, I know that I make all my guests nervous when I tell them about 6 and 60. And so I feel like it's like ripping off the band-aid. Let's just do this,
All
right?
right.
All right.
All right.
So we're now going to um, uh, move on to the 6 and 60 portion of this interview. 6 rapid fire questions, or as rapid fire as I can deliver them, with rapid fire answers, or as rapidly as you can deliver those within 60 seconds.
I'm here. Yep, ready.
All right. And here we go. What is one thing that you would like to see stick around after this pandemic?
Family time.
When you're feeling overwhelmed or burned out, what do you do to reset and recharge?
I swim laps like a mile a day.
You swim laps, and I saw this coming. I know you're a swimmer. I want to give you an opportunity to boast. How many miles do you swim in a month?
Well, I guess it's not a mile a day. It's probably like 15-ish. Ish.
Wow, wow. Um, I promise to allow you to use more than 5 words shortly, but as the kids say, give us a TLDR. 5 words or less define organizational integrity for us. That one stumped him.
No. uh, Aligning, thinking, saying, and doing.
Wow. One notable trait of your favorite boss of all time.
Empathetic.
Great. And best piece of advice or wisdom you've ever received?
That's a really hard question. I've gotten a lot. Uh, go where others aren't.
Love that. And that certainly seems to be what you're doing. So, Tate, you failed the test. It took you more than 60 seconds, but we
Yeah,
spoke before and we knew that was going to happen because I am long winded and you are thoughtful. And so, between the two of
and
us,
long-winded. Yeah.
that and long winded. Listen, oh, that's a good one too, right there. Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Sandra.
Hmm.
And anybody else who has a pearl of wisdom, definitely throw that in. Um, I don't know that folks describe me as empathetic, but thanks. Okay, so Tate, I want to ask you for your origin story first because I teased this that you're a
Hmm.
marketing guy,
I
and
am. Yeah.
then you fell into this area of organizational development, um, this area of helping leaders and teams and organizations build organizational integrity.
Hmm.
How did you get here?
Uh, well, a roundabout way. As I was working at my organization, I owned a branding and advertising company for about 15 years. Um, and I started developing some theories around what made advertising and branding effective, and a lot of that had to do with integrity, both the integrity of the organization, the integrity of the message that they were putting out, and people, their audience's perception of themselves and the integrity that they had. Um, what I found though was because I was coming at it from a marketing standpoint, so I am generally talking to the VP of marketing or a CMO at a big organization. These people didn't have responsibility for organizational integrity at their institutions, and the institutions aren't set up to hear from marketers in their own companies. Marketers generally don't go to the CEO or the COO and say, hey, can we change the way we operate? Marketers generally are, the president talks into their ear and they're supposed to speak, clarify it and speak to the world. Um, and what we would find is we would get into organizations, and due to the way that we built our brands and ads based on integrity, we would find these disconnects organizationally, and we would say to the marketing guy, well, we can do the thing that you're wanting us to do, we can say the thing that you want us to develop the campaign around, but you've got this problem back in your organization, and if we don't fix this, you're going to end up with more problems because you're not being clear about what this disconnect is within your organization that's going to
Huh.
cause failure. Um, and that got more as the theory developed, as we got better at it, those issues became more and more common. And so I found that eventually I believed that what I should be doing is taking this knowledge that I have and working with the organizations themselves to fix those problems. And it was actually in meeting our mutual friend, who's now a partner, that we did it. We've now been able to get into organizations that are struggling, help identify root cause problems, bring solutions to them, and help them move forward so that they can have long term success.
That's fascinating. So you would go out and do like market research and survey focus groups, whatever I imagine, right? Talking to people about their perceptions of the organization.
Yeah.
And you'd find a mismatch between what the organization said they are and what the people thought the organization was. Would that be accurate?
That's one of many, yes,
Yeah.
where an organization has a belief that is not shared by their audience as
Yeah.
to how they're perceived or what's important. Um, and so some of that can be just a shift in marketing. But if the organization itself is acting on a different belief that then drives their consumers, the people they're trying to reach, that's a tension that needs to be resolved. We need to find a way to make what matters to the organization and what matters to the audience, or vice versa, change what matters to the organization.
That's so interesting. So really, nothing has changed for you because it's the same sort of disconnects that happen inside an organization. And
Mm-hmm.
so you got in there and are now working with the organizations, with the people in the organization that can actually make these changes. But
Mm-hmm.
really, it's still measuring these disconnects that were being measured external, now are being measured internal. Are you
Mm-hmm.
still measuring the external as well? Is that a part of the larger picture?
I think that that will become so. We've only done a few projects now. We are looking to expand, and the issues that our clients have had thus far have been, they are looking almost entirely internally. They realize they've got a challenge, but they haven't been able. Like some of them have been working 5, 10 years to solve a single challenge, and it's just not working. And so it's not about what the exterior thinks. It's they know they've got dysfunction. How do they identify and resolve it?
So when you saw this problem, first of all, being in marketing, your job is to go make us money, right? We don't want you looking at all these problems. What do you? You're out of
Yeah.
scope, right? Just go make us money. But you saw that this stood in the way of that, right?
Yes. Yes.
But
Yeah.
why?
And
But there's something very special about you to zone in on integrity and to label it as such, when you're already out in this marketing world.
mm-hmm.
Um, is there, what is it that drove you toward integrity? Was this something that you thought about in other aspects of your life, or that was there some experience that brought you toward integrity beyond the experiences with these clients? Like, what do you think makes you different that you couldn't not see that in the as the issue for these organizations?
um, well, there are a few things. I graduated with a major in philosophy from college, and one of the things, it prepares you to do almost nothing other than think, um, which you normally, it's a great skill to have, but trying to understand problems not for what people say they are, but for what's actually there. And that's certainly been a driver for me in my adult life. Trying to find, like, when you look at the way many business problems are solved, be that advertising, organizational development, when there's a challenge, um, there's a right way to do things that people use. It's based on, almost universally, it's based on other people's experiences with similar problems. Um, and that generally doesn't work for me, hadn't worked for me when I would try to do what other people did, without sort of understanding the why behind it. My results were crappy. But when I started trying to figure out, okay, so what's the motivation of this company? Why are they doing these things? Who are they trying to reach and what's important to them? I started realizing everybody is motivated in some way by their own perception of who they are, whether or not they have integrity, why they're doing these things. And it was just like this big jumbled mass of feelings and drivers. And I thought there was something in there. And that was actually, there was somebody shared on social media in like 2008, uh, a quote with me that was like the first insight into this whole universe, and it was from Gandhi, and you'll see in a bit why this tied in. Gandhi had a quote on happiness. Happiness is when what you think, what you say, and what you do are in harmony. And for me, I got focused on that for months. I started trying to reorient Stokefire version 1.0, which I ran then, around this idea, and tried to figure out what else was in that, and realized in short order that it also had it touched on how people perceived their own integrity. Um, Yeah, so randomly, it was just like looking at a tweet that sparked it, sort of connected all of these things, that big jumble, that mess of emotion and drivers and communication and belief, and allowed me to kind of pull the pieces apart and look at what was there.
Wow, that's truly amazing that you were able to find something so deep through Twitter. The only thing
Mhm.
I find on Twitter is anger,
Mhm.
generally. So
There's a
that
lot of that.
yeah, so that's really impressive, and I love that quote and this idea of alignment, which I hope we'll get deeper into. But so you come from philosophy, and typically that's not what the we're looking for MBAs to bring into our organizations, not
Mhm.
philosophers.
Yeah.
Um, is there a difference between a moral issue and a business issue? Because when I think integrity, I think of that as a moral issue.
Yep.
And businesses want to know how to, gain efficiency, be more effective, and mostly build that bottom line. Um,
Right.
how do you sell this as a business issue? And do you truly have to spin it as a business issue? Because you're the integrity guy, so I hope there's some reality to this as an actual business issue.
So yeah, if I can't answer this question, I think I'm in the wrong business. The
This is another great business mind, by the way, who was a philosophy major. Who
Hi,
knew?
Casey.
Hey, Casey. Yeah,
Um,
please. Sorry, it's my
the
ADD.
so there is at a basic level, the first thing that I do when I talk about integrity is that I focus us in not on that the sort of the dictionary definition, which has morality and ethics and the state of being whole and unimpaired, all of this loosey goosey stuff. That is not what I'm talking about first. What I'm talking about first is it's actually a technical term, structural integrity. So we're starting with an engineering concept. Structural integrity is stability of a thing, a single item or a group of items that for them to function under load or stress, including its own weight, without failing. That, when I talk about the baseline integrity, that's what we're talking about. That's efficacy, the ability to do the things that we are supposed to do and not fall, and have not have the bridge fall into the water while we're doing it.
Right.
Um, Structural integrity amounts for a lot, and so we go back to that quote from Gandhi: uh, "Thinking, saying, doing, being aligned." Structural integrity is when an organization or a person's beliefs, so their beliefs and values, their message, and their actions are all aligned with each other. But there's more to this in the structural side. When we align our actions and messages, in order to do that, we have to be dependable and specific.
Mm.
Messages and values aligning gives us honesty and transparency. And then matching our values and actions gives us awareness and drive. So, structural integrity, those six things, structural integrity for people or for businesses isn't one thing, it's
Mm.
six things: dependability, specificity, honesty, transparency, awareness, and drive. So that gives us the baseline of what integrity is. When we bring in that sort of the feel good side of it, the morality side, this is very different. There was another quote that I came across while I was actually doing research. Uh, I and I said this the last time we spoke casually. It's always a struggle for me to talk about this. I called it the Hitler problem. That
Mm.
you've got this issue where, okay, we've just created efficacy here. We've got, you do these six things and you can knock over walls, conquer worlds. Everything is aligned for your success. But if your intent, your beliefs, your values are bad, all you're doing is bringing destruction and evil into the world. So how do we prevent that from happening? Because we don't want everybody to go out there and have structural integrity and kill
Huh.
everybody. Uh, and there's a quote from a fellow by the name of Captain G.M. Gilbert. Let me see if I can pull this up. He was an army psychologist assigned to watching the defendants at the Nuremberg trials, and his quote goes, uh, "In my work with the defendants, I was searching for the nature of evil, and now I think I have come close to defining it: a lack of empathy. It's the one characteristic that connects all the defendants, a genuine incapacity to feel for their fellow men. Evil, I think, is the absence of empathy." And
Wow.
so that's the last piece of the puzzle, um, because we as organizations, I believe, don't want to be seen as evil. As people, we don't want to be seen as evil, and we don't want to be evil. So having this last piece of ensuring that when we do something, we are aware of the impact we have on the people who work for us, for the people who are outside of our organization and are impacted by it, our audience, all of that, taking that into consideration is that last piece that brings in a sense, that morality, the ethics into it, without having to say, here are the 19 things that you must believe. No, we're not saying that. We're just saying, consider the impact of your actions, beliefs, and messages on others.
Huh. So a variety of organizations interested in a variety of different things in a variety of different industries, they can all practice the same thing and it will look different. And even organizations where they are not, they're very aligned with their messaging, etc. They're giving those realistic job previews and telling people, yeah, you come to work here, we're going to abuse you and whatever. That in a sense is integrity,
Yeah.
but the empathy piece for all stakeholders, I guess,
Mm-hmm.
would be that missing piece between, or the final piece between doing good and not doing good.
Yeah.
That's uh, evil. I think is the absence of empathy. That's compelling on a personal level. Yeah. And have you encountered leaders that are narcissistic and lack empathy? So that's a great question. I would double down on that and say, can a narcissistic leader um, uh, execute a organization with a organizational integrity?
I think organizational integrity, yes, they can be highly effective, but the flaw when you lack the flaw that creeps in when you lack that empathy is your there's an awareness piece of functional structural integrity that a narcissist, there are parts that they can't see. They can't do that, shift their perspective to view it from the employees or the customer side, because their focus is so much focused on them. They might be able to try to do it as a tool to figure out how to get somebody else to do something, but that's not their driver. I have worked with people, clients, at times in my own career, early on, prior to figuring out what Stokefire was, and how it was going to operate. The discovery of um, the discovery of this model changed my behavior significantly, changed my priorities significantly, and changed the way that I made choices that impacted the lives of the people who worked for me. Shortly after coming up with the model and digesting it, offered healthcare to my team. I used to provide like all the Coke and snacks that anybody could, Coca-Cola, pop, that sort of stuff. Um, and I was in the middle of a meeting explaining to everybody uh, why this model that I had been discovering and developing, why it was important, and how I was going to use everything, um, to be more supportive of the team and to help us reach the goals. And I looked down at the table in the middle of the room, and it was like all sodas and candy. And I just stopped and said, I'm doing this wrong. This is not helping you. Yes, it gives you energy now, but it's destroying the health of everybody who works for me. They didn't have health care. I offered that. It changes the way you make decisions because you realize I am not trying to win today. I am trying to build something for the long-term success of the organization and the people who work for it. And so we can't do that by destroying our health by doing work that doesn't make sense. All of it changes, and it for people who understand the system, it helps somebody who might have tendencies towards narcissism, which I think I may have, and sort of pulls that out of you and says, okay, regardless of whether or not you're a narcissist, do you want this to work? And it changes the way that we see things.
Yeah, there's a great study on. I think the study was called something along the lines of selling up. It's basically how to sell or manage your leaders and executives. And one of the arguments that they found, one of the things that they found works, was when individuals would link whatever it is that they were trying to get the organization to the buy-in from leadership on, they would link it to organizational strategy directly. And so sometimes linking those things that feel a little bit soft to the brass tacks, the stuff that the organization really cares about, that leader really cares about, and also, the money, right? That's a good way in the door. So how would somebody do this? How did somebody convince their organization, their leaders, that we need to focus more on integrity, when the leader might push back and say, we're here to do business. I don't want to hear any more of those millennials arguing about this stuff, which, they call anybody younger than, I think, 60 now a millennial.
Yeah.
But what does that mean? What is the argument for doing this in terms of what type of returns can we expect when we have this model of integrity built into our organizational culture and structure?
It's an interesting question. Integrity. How do you sell it internally? I think the question that I would be, if I were inside an organization and seeking to bring this kind of structure, I would be asking the question, what are we trying to do here? And is this something where we are willing to, are we looking to succeed now or are we looking to, so instant success is needed, or are we trying to build something and grow towards it? Structural integrity will not help you with now. And in fact, it often slows down now. And so often the things that help us to succeed today, tomorrow, really short term, are things that damage our ability to have lasting success. It's really easy if somebody as a salesperson is told you need to hit your numbers this month, and they're at their huge numbers, they've got to sell a ton of stuff. It's much easier for them to, if all they have to do is make the sale, they promise the world to the client or the prospective client, say, yes, we'll do X, Y, Z, whatever you need, it's there. They make the sale. And from the salesperson's perspective, they're done. Organizationally, significant damage has occurred because, yes, they've gotten funds in the door, they've made their numbers, but now they're committed to do something that they can't do. They sell vaporware in order to make their numbers, and but now you've got a client on board who is expecting something they're not going to get. And that can do more damage than just the amount of money that was brought in. There can be lawsuits based on that. You've got loss of goodwill. You've got negative press. But that person was incentivized to not have integrity. You told them, go out and hit the numbers. You didn't say, I need you to hit your numbers this month and then for the next 12 months. No, it was just do this now. And so if the focus of the organization is all now and the leadership is okay with never addressing the future doesn't need to see growth, it's a hard sell. If you can convince people to think about what is the impact of the way that we're selling, the way that we're operating, when we have meetings, um, does anybody take minutes? Are there agendas sent out? These are the kinds of things that, even though they don't feel like they involve integrity, they do.
Yeah.
Dependability is part of integrity. And if you don't take notes, if you don't have the ability to track who is assigned with what, when is it due, what are the dependencies, all of that stuff, you don't have dependability. You can't track anything. And so the way to bring organizational integrity in is to talk about what are the challenges that your organization faces. Um, do we have trouble tracking things? The biggest alert that there's a problem, and it's a really common phrase, if you've got people who are really good at putting out fires, there is an integrity problem at your organization. Putting out fires means that all of that structure that is supposed to be supporting you is either not there or not functioning. You don't have structural integrity if you're putting out fires. Structural integrity prevents those fires from starting.
Interesting. So, I've had the privilege of working with a few organizations that really get their core values right, in the sense that it's not just on the wall, but it's ingrained in every individual. And one of the benefits that I've seen within those organizations is that so much of the work, and specifically the management, can be put on autopilot. Because when you can just ask your people to run the values through their head when making decisions, then you shouldn't have to dictate decisions so much, right? As long as
Yeah.
you're hiring people who, I mean, you're the one that's hiring them and training them. So hopefully they come up with the right answers. But being able to hand that over and say we're all on the same page here, as long as you have the core values of our organization in mind, we trust you to do the right thing. Is that a piece of this?
Yes. That's a part that I don't think I fully understood, or may not even completely understand, and I haven't diagrammed out fully. But yes, within an organization, you can have everything aligned, and then hire people who don't share the same values. They are not going. The way I phrase it when I talk about it within my own organization is they can't breathe.
Mm-hmm.
Like the way that your organization functions based on those values, if you bring in somebody who doesn't share those values, they can't make the decisions that are going to help your organization succeed because they're not coming from the same place. You have a cause oriented organization that's mission driven and not as attached to revenue. If you bring somebody who's all about the dollar and that's why they're there, the decisions they make are not going to be aligned with what's best for the organization, or what the organization believes is best for itself.
Right. So when you go into organizations, and so you have Stokefire, and we are going to share the link to that at the end of this talk, and everyone's getting really a sneak peek. Like, I think I'm responsible for them putting the gas on this because they wanted it out for this exclusive. That's can I say that with integrity? Is that
You
true?
can.
There you go. So it is a Water Cooler Wednesday exclusive. But when you launch Stokefire and the work you're doing with Stokefire, when you go into these organizations, the what is something that you like start off by measuring? You talked about, are you constantly putting out fires, but are there some sort of survey or question, or something that you can ask of an individual that will start giving you a better understanding of the level of integrity or lack of organizational integrity that exists?
Uh, the engagements that we've had, we talk with usually a leadership team, so representatives from operations, often the CEO, um, somebody in charge of HR, talent, something along those lines, and we have a conversation where we're sort of pushing in we test push a number of buttons. So we'll talk about a values fit. Is everybody organization top to bottom? Is everybody on the same page? Have you defined what organizational values there are? What we're looking for is there the potential for any disconnects here? And if so, where? And then we have a standardized set of questions that we can survey. Generally, we want to survey everybody in the organization if possible. If we're trying to get an assessment of the organization, we can also do a more 360 or 180 oriented survey that helps identify for specific leaders where there are areas of misalignment. So we have a set of formal questions that we provide once the engagement starts. Prior to it, all we're trying to do is determine, do the symptoms of misalignment exist within your organization? And that's one of the keys here. As we are looking through that list: dependability, specificity, honesty, there are predictable business outcomes that come from lacking any of these things. So if dishonesty is in existence, we would expect to see challenges where your sales are likely good or higher than average, but your retention is low. High employee and customer turnover where you're not able to keep them, things along those lines. And the honesty stuff has a very fast turnaround. Like, if you're dishonest to somebody during the hiring process, they start that first week.
Yeah.
If the environment that they enter is nothing like what you said it was going to be, they're gone. They're not going to be there for 3 years and then leave. They're going to say, hell no, I'm out.
Right.
And we've seen that.
Yeah. So Brittany brings something up, and Brittany, by the way, is your partner, and I think very familiar within the IO psychology and HR communities. Brittany is one of my favorite IO, industrial organizational psychology consultants, and really one of my favorite human beings. So it makes sense that that the integrity guy would partner with Brittany. Makes total sense to me, because that is definitely who she is. So just a plug for your partner here. But Brittany asked, is it possible? But then Brittany asked this leading question here, right? Is it possible that an organization has identified some values that they want to live out, but in reality, their values are something else? So what I'm understanding here is this misalignment that is not purposeful or trying to get over on people, but this misalignment that they think, yes, these are our values, and that's not actually how they're actualizing.
Yes, that happens, and it happens all the time and everywhere. It's hard. We want to believe good things about ourselves, that the things that motivate us are selfless, that we are motivated by something greater than ourselves. But regardless of what philosophy or psychologist you're referencing, there are Maslow's needs. If you're interested in bringing goodness to humanity, but your own survival needs aren't being met, it's really hard to make decisions based on that sort of higher up common good if you don't know where food is going to be coming from for your kids that night. So that stressor where you think you're being driven by one thing, but that survival instinct or something else is pulling you off of that. Identifying it with this tool, this process that we have, helps to identify those things. And rather than sort of bashing you over the head and saying stop lying, it's more trying to understand, okay, so how do we make this into a singular entity? What are our beliefs and values that can fit all of this together so that we can, as an organization, as a person, make the best choices for our interests? Because you can't have, if you are all about supporting the common good, but you're not supporting your survival, you can't help the common good. It doesn't matter what you do, because you're not going to be there anymore. And so dealing with that, bringing those together, um, yeah, part of what we do is try to highlight those differences and not punish people for them, but work to understand them, make them a part of the organization, so they can see how those kinds of things are impacting the work that they do.
Great. I had a client once who leadership had this beautiful mission and vision. And when I was interviewing some of their employees and even managers, I asked if they were familiar with the mission. And this wasn't necessarily something written down, but it was what do they want to do here? And everybody assured me that they knew. But
Mhm.
when I pressed them to tell me what is the mission, they all kind of made this person sound like, or I've got a fly in here somewhere. They made this. They made this leadership team sound like they were what's the guy, the Onceler or whatever, right? The biggering and biggering and biggering.
Yeah.
That, yeah, the mission is to keep growing this and keep making more money. And they said it in a positive way, like, yeah, I'm totally on board with that. But of course, they probably weren't so on board with that because they weren't making more money necessarily. But also the fact that everybody thought they were on the same page, but they weren't. The fact that they really did think they knew what the mission was, and leadership really did think that they knew what the mission was, but it was completely misaligned.
Yeah. That's very. I believe that is common, and I would say uh, most people at most organizations that I have encountered, if you ask them what the organizational values are, they will not be able to tell you.
Mm.
Um, uh, some of that is because when you look at the values lists, I've seen values lists of like 18 values, which is just crazy. Or they do something. One of the like a very common value that people have, organizations have, is integrity. It's like one
Mhm.
of three things. What what the hell is integrity? So okay, so how do you have that without going into what we've been discussing? Integrity, are you talking moral? Are you talking the, and I'm fairly certain they're not talking about the six things that we've been talking about, but
Right.
it's kind of meaningless. um, it is what you say it is, rather than something definable that you can say, here is how we are doing, versus if we have this value, this can guide us. and
Mm.
and the way that most organizations have it, um, people don't know what they are. If they know what they are, they likely don't know how that's supposed to impact what they do on a daily basis. It's just, it's noise. It's not, I forgot what your question was, but it's not an effective way. it, it doesn't fit with, um, it generally is detached from what the organization is trying to do, unless the organization spends a massive amount of time and effort to bring everything together and make it meaningful.
Right. So this brings up two questions. The first one, I guess, is you just said that it seems like many organizations are lacking in this department, right? Um, are there some organizations that are doing this right? Is there like a model that you could point us to of an organization that um, you may not have been in that organization to see really the intricacies, but that it seems like they're doing it right? Um, is there an example of what this looks like when things are actually aligned with integrity?
Well, so a few things. Yes. And unfortunately, I could not state the values of either company. In other words, I don't know what their value
Uh huh.
statement are, but um, when I look at organizations that appear to live by a set of values,
Yeah.
I look at organizations like Patagonia comes to mind,
Hmm.
uh, as does, in a very different sense, Chick-fil-A,
Oh yeah.
where they are both strongly values driven, uh, and link those to the activities they do, the way they hire, who they promote, why they promote them. and you might disagree with one or both of those, but the things that the leadership believes are important, that filters through the entire organization.
Hmm.
And for good or bad, people who work there, people who shop there or don't shop there, know pretty much what those values are.
Yeah, those are two really great examples because they are very different values that are
Mm-hmm.
aligned, some overlapping, but some very different. But I think anybody could recognize that. But you said, and you don't know what their written values are, and maybe we can make the argument that it doesn't matter what your written values are because that stuff is. I mean, if you have to write it down and you have to, I mean, it really it's about communicating those values to your people and living those values. How important is communication to all of this? Is that the underpinnings of all of this? Is that how you make this work?
Uh, well, yes. I don't want to say it's the underpinnings because it's one third of the three pieces of
Yeah,
that puzzle. The message, the communications, in concert with what those values are and how you act. You can't take any of them out, or you end up with 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 problems. You lose efficacy because if you can't act or if your actions aren't aligned, regardless of whether or not people know what your values are, having values that you don't act on is kind of
right.
pointless.
Or maybe even
Uh,
counterproductive.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. This is incredibly powerful stuff, and you created the Linden's integrity model, right? That's what it's
The
called, right?
lens. Yeah.
The
Linden's
lens.
lens.
Sorry,
Yeah.
the Linden's integrity lens. And how many points are there on this lens? Could you give us like a brief overview? I know, Tate said I didn't bring a visual. I'm like, just tell us a brief overview, and I hope people will want to connect with you to learn more about the actual depth of the knowledge of the model.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity. So I've actually given a sneak peek of it verbally already. This is the understanding. The lens is taking the three areas, the stuff we think, say, and do, and that applies to people as well as organizations. And the understanding that when things are aligned, so we get these positive qualities: dependability, specificity, honesty, transparency, awareness, and drive. Those six things plus empathy are what give us structural integrity, and then the sort of feel good aspect with the empathy. The same things, when they are not aligned, has corresponding signs or ways that we would describe them that have generally negative long-term impacts, and they are really easy to see once you know what to look for. So that's lack of inconsistency, uh, vagueness, dishonesty, secrecy, and secrecy is not keeping trade secrets. That's about secrecy is hiding your true motivation. So not being willing to say why you are making these decisions that you're making. Um, Lack of awareness or inattentiveness, and being aloof or just adrift, the opposite of drive, being disconnected from your purpose. Those six things each have tangible outputs, and the lens is the method that we use to see those and then work to connect them back. So we can take them because we know what the symptoms are of each of these six things,
Mm-hmm.
and we can connect those with the root cause. So if we see, like the example we gave where you've got really high sales but you can't keep anybody and you've got high staff turnover for new hires, we know where that comes from. That comes from uh, particularly having trouble with honesty, telling the truth in certain circumstances. Usually they're difficult truths. So telling to somebody, okay, you can come work for us, but it's really miserable. You're going to get yelled at. It's really hard work. It's hot, whatever it is. organizations generally feel like they can't be honest with that. They'll either not be transparent about what the situation is, or they'll just say something else, trying to get bodies in the door to help. So the lens lets you connect the root cause to the symptom. And most of the time, like for instance, in that situation where you have super high turnover where nobody will stay because it's miserable, there's a temptation to say, well, what we should do is develop a retention program and an onboarding program to make things better for those people. But that's not where the problem is. The retention is the symptom.
Mm.
A retention program's likelihood of working in an environment where employees are being lied to before they get in the door is really low. You got to fix the problem in order for the retention program to have an effect. And so that's the lens helps you see that it says, okay, so you've got the symptom, what's causing this? And the lens helps you see these invisible things that there is no line item for honesty in your 10K. It's or whatever your annual report.
Right.
We are giving you glasses, a lens to view all of these root causes of just about every, and I say just about because although we've been able to quantify every problem, I know there are more business problems than we have checked, but there are hundreds of problems that we can line up with the 6 disconnects plus empathy.
Okay, now I want to ask you a final question before we tell people how to get in touch with you, etc., and that website that we teased. Putting this in action, right now there seems to be like this uptick of organizations that are laying off some employees. What about the organization that part of their values, right? Part of their integrity is that they have transparency and they find that it's important and they tell people it's important. But now they're going to have this big layoff. And if they let everybody know, there's always this sort of struggle, because if we're too transparent with this, then everybody's going to be looking to leave. And what are we going to be stuck with, right? It could cause a lot of issues for the organization if we let people know before telling them who and before we're ready for the layoffs, etc. Can an organization veer off from their alignment with their integrity in specific situations and continue to have integrity or recover from that? What does that take? What would you recommend to an organization, coming up against a problem like that?
Well, there's a few things. The first one is something that I talk a lot about have talked a lot about in the past with Brittany. This idea, one of the things is that when people talk about integrity, it's like, oh, that person or that organization has it. My view is that no person or organization has it. Integrity, this is going to sound really picky, integrity isn't a thing you can have, it's a when. It is when things are aligned, you are in integrity. You have it in that moment, but it is as close to as impossible that I can think of without actually being impossible to always have it. At some point, you're going to do something that's not perfectly aligned, and it pulls you off center. And I think the healthy way to look at this is, and the phrase that I used with Brittany is embrace the wobble. You are sort of a pendulum that's swinging through and across and around, and you want to spend as much time as possible in that middle. But we can't grow as people in organizations if we are just focused on being in that perfect place where everything is aligned. That's sameness, that's static. What we want to do is sort of move around a little bit. Hey, if I go in this direction just a little bit, what happens? What's the positive? What's the negative? What do I learn from that? If you don't adjust, shift as you're going through these things, and the question that you had about layoffs, that's exactly the kind of thing that as somebody who is a proponent of the system, I want people to think about that. I want them to because that is hard. Hey, if we think about long term and we want people to stay here long term, we've got to be honest with them so that they don't think, oh, I'm next.
Right.
What do we say? How are we clear about this? And what's the consequence if we lie, if we don't share, and something happens? But think it through. Make that choice with intention. If it pulls you slightly off center, learn from that, and acknowledge to your organization that we are making a choice that that we are going to try sacrificing long-term stability to get a near-term benefit, and own that.
Wow, that's beautiful. I love the idea of embrace the wobble. It's imperfect organizations made up of imperfect people in an imperfect world. It's not always going to be 100%.
Yeah,
I probably
exactly.
wouldn't trust an organization that is 100% on it all the time. So that's very powerful, and I'm glad we sort of left off on that. Please reach out to Tate to continue this conversation. You can link with him on LinkedIn, correct, Tate?
Yep.
LinkedIn's a great place to continue that conversation. You can also hover your camera right over Tate's QR code there, and it will bring you up to the brand new Stokefire.com website. And you'll learn more about what Tate and Brittany are doing. This is really incredible work. That's just good all around. It's financially wise and good. It's morally wise and good. I'm so excited to see this pair teamed up and the incredible work that they are doing and this organization that they are building. Absolute blown away by the work that they're doing and how quickly they're building this is really amazing. I hope that you will all join us next week, as we will be, or not next week, I'm sorry, 2 weeks from this airing, on August 24th, Wednesday, August 24th at 12 p.m. Eastern Time, on the next Water Cooler Wednesday, when we will be featuring Amber Fields. She's the CEO and founder of Black UX Labs. If you've ever heard of Black UX Labs, you're going to want to tune in to see how this idea was formulated, where this came from, and to really learn Amber and the Black UX Labs story. If you are familiar with Black UX Labs, you'll want to know about it. If you have not learned or are not familiar with Amber and Black UX Labs, you will also want to tune in, because they're doing some incredible stuff within this organization. So make sure to catch us here next time. Tate, thank you again, and thank all of you for tuning in today. So appreciated. Such an important conversation to have.
This was great.
And Tate, please, I'll give you the last word.
I don't know that I want the last word, but I appreciate it. This has been a wonderful experience. I have never been on a podcast before, so thank you for being very gentle with me, and a lot of fun. So,
yeah, that's not a bad performance. Your first podcast was a live stream. That takes a lot of guts. And
it was a what?
It's a live stream. We're live.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you again, and we will catch you next time. Reach out, connect with Tate, connect with me. Looking forward to continuing the conversation.
Take care, everybody.